This is why I like to collaborate and do stuff with a group, because I had a couple of you come up and make some excellent points that I want to make sure I clarify. While we definitely want our players to leave their comfort zone, and getting them to increase their tolerance for discomfort is extremely important, nothing is more important than making sure that they're doing things correctly and that they're doing things well. That's another big problem. The last thing we want to do is add dysfunction by trying to get players to either add extra resistance or do extra reps when they're not doing it correctly. So it is always most important for them to do correctly. We want our players to move correctly, and then we can always add speed, we can add strength, we can add height, we can add intensity. Those things come later. So whether we're talking about footwork or we're talking about posture and a push-up, we want it to be done correctly. Perfect example with a push-up, arguably the most common upper body weight exercise and definitely the most abused. If you tell a player to do 20 push-ups, because that's your policy, hey, you missed the layup, do 20 push-ups, and they're only physically capable of doing 6 or 7, you know what happens? They do 6 or 7 good push-ups and then they do 12 or 13 horseshit push-ups, right? Well, we don't want that. That just means you had them do 12 or 13 reps of something in the wrong way. You're programming and teaching them to do something incorrectly. So we got to be very, very careful with that. Not to mention that, again, when we're talking about strength, conditioning, performance work, if you're having them do something with their body, you could actually be doing more harm than good if you're having them do bad technique. Now, I told you that I make my living in the performance space, so I am not an expert on shooting. That's what you guys do. But I have had some chance to be privy to some of Kyle Korver's workouts. Kyle Korver's obviously a pretty good shooter. Kyle Korver, you know when he ends his workout? He ends his workout the moment he starts to see his form break down. Some days that's after 30 minutes, some days that's after 90 minutes. It just depends on what else is going on. But the moment he doesn't feel that he's shooting the same way every time in correct form, he stops because he does not want to do repeat bad movement patterns. And a bad rep will take away a lot more than a good rep will add. Doing 1 or 2 bad reps can take away a lot more than 10 to 12 good reps. So we need to make sure, especially at the youngest of ages, that we're holding our players accountable and programming them to do things the right way. Going back to the example of shooting, if you go in and you shoot technically incorrectly over time, you just get good at bad shooting. That's all that you do. You reinforce the wrong thing. So any player, when they get to your level and you see that they've got something jacked up in their shot, that's because they've been allowed to shoot incorrectly for thousands and thousands of repetitions. So again, for those of you that work with young players, that's the time that we need to start to cement the proper way to in this case, shoot. For me, for our warm-up, it needs to be me cementing the proper way for them to move correctly. Now, with movement, movement is not something that you can change overnight or quickly. Movement takes thousands and thousands of repetitions, which again is why the warm-up is so important. If I'm watching Till every single day in a warm-up and he's squatting and he has some issues with his squat, I'm not going to fix that by the afternoon. I'm not even going to fix it by next Friday, but I'll fix it over time if I'm constantly coaching and giving him coaching cues, and over time we will fix that. That's the other reason that the warm-up is great, because now you get a 10-minute block of time every single day you're with your players to try to correct some of those movement patterns. Another coach brought up a great point that we talk so much about footwork, but we don't talk a ton about hands. Obviously, the hands are really important in the game of basketball. So there's a few things to think about. One, we actually talked with the players yesterday, and if you see yesterday's film, you'll see that, about always putting up a target on offense. Right now, even if you guys didn't speak a lick of English and you had a basketball in your hands, I would not need to say a word. If I did this, I bet you everything in the world I own, including my children, you would pass me the ball. I've been places where no one speaks English, and I just do this, and they just gravitate. They just give you the ball. Players, if you want the ball, you come off of a screen with your hands up. Someone will throw you the ball. So on offense, that's one thing we want to look at. Defensively, it needs to be whatever it is you teach from a principle standpoint. I think everyone would agree that no defensive player should have their hands here. But whatever it is that you teach, do you want hands wide? Do you want palms open? When you have players close out, do you want them to close out with one hand all the time, or do you want them to close out with 2? Do you want them to close out with the same hand that mirrors the shooter? These are things that you need to constantly reinforce. And this just goes back to whatever it is your philosophy is. But the great point that he brought up is, make sure you're talking about hands. Do you want players, if I'm guarding somebody in triple threat, do you want me tracing the ball wherever they go? Whatever it is that you believe, but let's not, great point Sasha made, let's not neglect talking about what we want with the hands. We talk all the time about feet, so we're going to get what we want with the feet. Let's make sure we do stuff with the hands as well. All right, I've got about an hour. And I've got a whole series of drills I want to make sure we get in. All right, you guys grab your partners again. Come on out here. We're going to do a strength series now. Yep, just come on out. Just find a drill stage. You two guys can come up front. Only one guy needs the ball. Strength, in my opinion, is the epicenter of everything we do from a performance standpoint, because improving the body's strength, basketball strength, will give them the ability to run faster, to jump higher, to have a stronger base, to be on balance. It'll give them the muscular strength and stability they need to decelerate, to load and explode and change direction. So I believe that strength is the epicenter. However, what we're trying to improve is basketball strength. By my definition, basketball strength means a player can perform the skills of the game, shooting, passing, rebounding, defending, and handling the ball at full speed with full efficiency against contact. That's all that matters. How much a player can bench press or curl or snatch or squat means nothing to me personally. It may mean something to you, and that's fine. It means nothing to me. As long as a player can perform the skills of the game at full speed with full efficiency against contact, that's all that I'm looking for. That is basketball strength. And I think we're starting to see a new age of player with a KD and a Stephen Curry, who have a very slight build and who we can all agree will not be able to lift very much weight in a weight room. But those guys are plenty basketball strong. Those are two of the most skilled players on the planet, and they can do everything at full speed as efficiently as a human can do them, and they do them against, again, arguably the best athletes on the planet. So those guys are basketball strong. So that's what we're looking to develop. With that being said, there are several ways to build basketball strength. Using kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells, medicine balls is one way to build basketball strength. It's not the only way. You can build great basketball strength just using your own body. I'm from the belief that the human body is the best piece of machinery ever invented. This is all we need. And you can do a series of body weight exercises, as we saw during some of those quadruped series, that puts the body in some compromising positions that make leverage, against gravity, things become very, very, very challenging. So another thing that we can do in addition to body weight exercises are partner resistance exercises. So I'm going to have Till come up here. We're going to do a couple things out of a quadruped position first. So just get in a push-up position first. And yep, he is going to hold this position here. As his partner, I'm going to push on him for about 10 seconds, and I don't want him to move, and then I'm going to pull on him for 10 seconds. Don't want him to move. So just go for 20 seconds. So go ahead, you guys can all do this. You don't need the basketball just yet. One guy down, one guy up. So you're going to push for 10 seconds, make sure you're breathing, and then pull for 10 seconds. Each person's going for 20 seconds. We keep it nice and short. So we're building some upper body strength, we're building some core stability. We're doing it with a teammate. Looking good, guys, and just make sure you switch. With this series that I'm going to show you, we will always go from steady tension to random chaotic tension, and I'll show you that. Looking good, guys. Looking really good. Yep. We'll do the next version in just a second. Going back to being able to do things correctly. If you work with really young players, maybe the age of those young men back there, or you work with females, at younger ages, females do not have the same requisite upper body strength that males do, especially in their younger teenage years. Which means if you're working with girls that are 10, 11 years old, some of these plank positions, that might be a little bit more challenging for them. So I'm just going to show you some ways to regress. With that being said, as Simon mentioned, I spent the last 6 years working at DeMatha Catholic High School. We've had a player drafted in the last 4 NBA drafts. Jeremy Grant, Victor Oladipo, we've had some really good players. We recruit really good players. We get kids in that are 9th graders that have the potential to be a McDonald's All-American. But even those kids, as talented as they are, have severe strength deficiencies. We have kids that come in as 9th graders that cannot hold a push-up position for 30 seconds. They're unbelievable basketball players, but they do not have the strength or core stability to hold the push-up. So with that being said, the stuff I'm showing you now, you have to keep in mind with the level of player that you're working at. Everybody gets excited by new stuff. I hope that some of the stuff I'm sharing with you makes you excited and you go home tomorrow and want to do this with some of your players. But as we just mentioned, you can only do the stuff that is appropriate for the level of player you're working with. If you have a player that cannot hold a push-up position before they start giving you some of this stuff, You don't need to worry about pushing and pulling on them. They're not ready for that yet. Just like my little man that just ran in and made a layup. That was awesome. He probably should not be jacking up three-pointers, right? He probably will because he's a kid. Doesn't mean that he should. So if you can't shoot close around the basket, you sure as hell can't shoot from far away from the basket. Same thing with the strength work. So let's make sure everything is done correctly before we add stuff on. Now, I got to know Till yesterday. He's a grown man. He's put together really well. I have no doubt he can do all of these drills. You just need to adapt that to whatever players you're working with. All right, same push-up position. Now this time we'll always go from steady tension, which is predictable, to random tension, which is more game-like. So he's just going to hold this position here, and I'm just going to give the quick jolts. Might push, pull, might hit him high, might hit him low. He's just trying to hold that position. Yep. So just go for about 15 seconds of quick jolts. Don't be afraid to lay a little on him now. You can hit him a little bit. Basketball is a contact sport. We want players that embrace and get used to having contact. We tell our players all the time, you know, when you go to the basket, why would you be surprised that somebody hits you? You realize the goal of the guys in the other color shirt is to prevent you from scoring, right? So why would you be surprised going to the basket? And for the love of God, why would you turn and look at the referee and whine that they don't call it? Go to the basket strong, expect to get hit, and just be pleasantly surprised if no one hits you. Nice job. All right, now we'll do a standing series. So you come up again. This time you're just going to chin the ball and hold the ball in a good athletic stance. Okay, now I'm going to push on his knee for 5 seconds. He's not going to let me move. I'm going to push on his hip for 5 seconds. I'm going to push on his shoulder for 5 seconds. Then I'll do the same thing on this side. So you're going for 30 seconds, 5 seconds, in 6 different land positions. All right, ready? Let's rock. And challenge your teammate. You guys can talk to each other. If they're not pushing hard enough, tell them to bring the noise. Tell them to push harder. If they're not pushing hard enough, they're cheating you out of a chance to get better. They're cheating you. And don't ever let somebody cheat you. And then get the other guy. Talk to each other. That's it. Give them a high five. Talk to each other.